All right, so let's jump in and start exploring how we can create this escape menu, the classic escape menu. There's a couple things that we want to have fire off when we hit the escape key. First and foremost, as I mentioned before, we need to make sure that we're drawing our interface, okay? Some buttons need to appear, and we also need to pause the game in the background. So let's get start kind of putting all this stuff together. The first thing that I want to do is I want to use this little cube here as a visualization of the game being paused, okay? So last week, or maybe it was the week before, I don't remember, we talked about a very simple script or a very simple way that we can programmatically create some animation inside of our game, right? Not everything has to be created with an animation clip. Animation clips are really fantastic for complex animations, but for simple things, your game is going to be optimized and lighter, if you will, in finger quotes, if you use some script and some scripting to move these objects for you. We don't have to do everything with an animation clip. Some stuff can and should be used or should be accomplished using code. All right, so I'm going to create just a really wicked simple script here that's just going to control the animation of my cube. So let's go in. I'm going to create a JavaScript, and let's just call this cube animation controller. We'll double click on it to open up a MonoDevelop and get the party started here. Okay. Now, from our previous conversation about this, how are we going to begin to, oops, here we go, font nice and big now. How are we going to go in and programmatically rotate my little cube? Does anyone remember? Within these two functions, and I'm giving you a 50-50 shot to get it right here, okay? Within these two functions, where are we going to place the code that's going to drive the rotation of our cube? Update, right? Because what's going to happen, or when is the update function evaluated? Yeah, basically every frame of the game. So it's a great place for us to put questions and commands that are going to be constantly evaluated. Now for us, whenever we want to go in and physically affect the transform channel of the game object that this script is attached to, okay? It's real simple, actually. Let's just go in. It's going to be transform. So in every sense, we're accessing the transform component that's been associated with the game object, right? Then, it's pretty easy. So rotate. Okay, there's the command itself. But there's some variables that we need to plug in here. Specifically, we need to tell the computer how much we're going to rotate this along all three of the axes, right? The X, the Y, and the Z. So in every sense, inside the parentheses here, we need to insert a value for rotation X, rotation Y, and of course, naturally, rotation Z. Now, I think for me, what I want to do, I just want my little cube to rotate around the Y axis. So I'll keep the X at 0 and the Z at 0. But let's just prove to ourselves that this is working before we go too much further. I'm a big, humongous, earth-shaking fan of kind of playtesting the script. Its simplest kind of component pieces before we make it complex. So let's just rotate our cube 45 degrees. Okay. Let's save the script, return to Unity, and left-click and drag that script onto our cube and see what we get. Is it working? Yeah, it's working, right? When we put it in the update function, it doesn't look like it's working, but it actually is working precisely the way we want it to work. What's happening here?
It's working every frame.
Every frame of the game, we're rotating this thing 45 units, or 45 degrees, excuse me, okay? And the speed of your computer determines how many frames per second the computer is drawing, right? So right now, I got 3 game objects in my scene, the camera, the directional light, and the cube. This could be rotating the cube 45 times or 2,000 times every second, okay? Let's start to slow this down a little bit. So I'll stop the game, Command P. We'll turn back to MonoDevelop, and let's start going in and influencing this. So instead of doing it 45 degrees every frame of the game system, of the game clock, if you will, let's slow this down. And a great way to slow this down is to multiply a value against the game clock, okay? Which is going to make a very minuscule rotation every single frame. So here's what we're going to do. I want to put 45 in parentheses So I can isolate it from the rest of the channels. And then multiply this, multiply this by time, dot delta time. Delta time, there we go. So that's the difference in time. So like the difference between 1 second and 2 seconds is going to be a second. The difference between 1 second and 3 seconds is going to be 2 seconds. Yeah. Basically, it's going to make a very, 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 very small number. So now with that saved and returning to Unity here, we'll hit the play button. Yeah, now it's moving much, much slower. Okay. Now, what's a fun way for us to expose that speed change in the inspector? Because right now we're hard coding it in, right? We've told the computer, rotate my little cube 45 degrees against the clock every frame. Is there a way that we can expose this in the inspector to make it a little bit more fluid? Absolutely, and take that one step further, Nathan, because you're absolutely right. What do we need to create? What is that float or that integer? Variable, right? We have to create a variable first, and then we'll data type that variable to either be an integer, a whole number, or a float value with a decimal point. Let's return to MonoDevelop here real fast and start plugging this in, okay? And I'm going to, at the very beginning of my script here, let's just create a new variable, and let's just call this speed, and we'll data type that to an integer, okay? I don't know what the number is going to be. However, maybe we should set the initial value to be 0, okay? I'm going to copy the word speed and replace 45 with the word speed. Okay, let's save the script and return to Unity. And now if I select my cube, now that speed value has been exposed in the editor, making this a editable feature, if you will, without having to go into the programming code and physically change the hard-coded value. Now I can go in and say, what's this look like at 10? Play it. Moves very slow. I can even go in and 15. What's that look at 15? That's good. What's it look like at 100? There it is at 100. So now we can iterate and prototype the speed of the animation much, much faster. I'll leave it at 45. That was kind of a good... Say again? Question? We're good? Okay. All right. So I'm happy with this. This is starting to flow and work the way I want it to work. I have created a simple scene that will allow me to test against a couple ideas. The first idea that we want to get kind of working here is the idea of drawing an interface element when we hit the escape key. Okay? Now we've already done this a little bit with Booleans. We're going to do it again because this is a switch, right? This isn't something that we hit once and then we forget about. We want to be able to hit the escape key, the menu's drawn, then hit the escape key again, the menu's taken away, just like you see in pretty much every game on the face of the planet these days, right? So this needs to be a switch type environment, right? Where it's on or it's off. It's on or it's off. We already kind of established the foundation for this a long time ago. I think the first conversation we had was about Booleans making a switch. Let's revisit that idea to a certain degree so that we can continue to apply those concepts into a little bit more of a complex environment, okay? So the first thing that I'd like to do whenever I prototype a switch is just to create the condition in which the switch is going to operate and then use it to basically flip a word, a string, or maybe a debug.log so a specific text element shows up in the console. Get the switch to work first, and then once you know it's working, we can wire it into a whole series of complex commands, okay? Let's get the switch working. If you remember, or let's take a step back and look at this for a second. How do we go back into our scene here and create a UI element? Okay, can be. How do we create a UI element? Because remember, this is going to be like an entire menu that's going to show up, right? A button, yeah. How do we create a button? Yeah. We're in the ballpark. Initially, we'll start off by going to the top of the screen where it says Game Object. Here it is UI. Okay. Now, I think I'm going to start just by creating a simple little text element. I like making a text element and then kind of generating a button from there. It makes it a little bit easier for me to understand all the building blocks. Okay. Okay. Now, if we zoom out a little bit and look at our scene in the editor, what in the world is this gigantic white box? That's our canvas. What is our canvas? Or what does that white box represent? Yeah, you got it. And if we take that one step further, that white border in every sense represents the boundary or the border of our game screen. Down here at the bottom, I've set my game screen to be an aspect ratio of 16:9. So I've locked that aspect ratio in, and the white box upstairs is matching that aspect ratio. If I was to change it, go to like 5:4, you can see that now my canvas is more square. I'll return it to 16:9. And where this little text element down here resides inside of our canvas is a direct representation of where that text element is going to appear on our computer screen. And let's just do this. I'm going to put it here. I'll put it right in the center. Naturally, I want to make this. Let's do main menu. There we go. I want to make this much bigger. Maybe even bigger than that. I'll go in and grab my Rect Transform tool and physically make the box bigger. I'm going to make this gigantic so it's really easy to see. There we go. I'll put it right there in the center of the screen. All right, rock and roll. I'm pretty happy with that. So there it is. That's my guy. I'm also going to make it white. And I'm doing this so when I make it into a button, I can see the rollover highlight color a little bit more easily. Okay. And while I'm here, let's just change the name of our text game object, our text UI game object, to represent its function inside the game. There's a series of conventions that people use out there. You can pick one and stick with it. Some people like to do this. They'll type GUI in lowercase and then main menu. That way you can very quickly see just in the hierarchy that this is a GUI game object and it's responsible for the main menu. You could even go in and put button or something. I'll just put main menu. There we go. All right. Aha. Liking it? But this is just a text element, though. It's an on-screen text. How do we make it into a button? How do I make it into a button?
So that's where you add the component, right?
Bingo, you got it.
And then you can throw the script on there.
So we'll go add component. Down at the bottom of our list here, we have UI, and we'll add the button component to our GUI game object. And let's go, before we go too much further, let's go in and change the normal color, the highlight color. Make it a nice red. The click color or pressed color will be a nice shade of blue. Let's play our game here and see what we get. Does it work? Yep. Maybe the highlight color shouldn't be red, considering that it's on top of a red cube. Let's make it a nice shade of green. Try it again, see what we get. There we go. Millions of options, and perhaps let's change the normal color too, because it's kind of hard to read, isn't it? Let's make it black. There we go. And then it goes blue when we click it. So there it is. It is actually functioning as a button right now. At the moment, however, we haven't wired this button to do anything when we click on it yet, right? We'll get to that much, much later, because the low-hanging fruit here is the escape key. Let's get that whole thing working. Now, we have a little bit of a challenge here, programmatically, in determining what is going to get turned on and off. And this is the big challenge for every single person in here, okay? There's a couple things that we can do. And let me show you some pitfalls, some landmines that folks will step on when you start doing some research out there in the real world. And this is something that I stepped on a number of times. Let's do it real fast. I'm going to do this. I'm going to go in and I'm going to create a new script. And I want to place this script on my button. Okay? And we'll tie it to a key press, and we'll see if we can disable and enable this thing back in again, right? So this is the way that a lot of folks will try to do it, but it's not going to work. Let me show you specifically why. Let me create a new JavaScript, and I'll just call this button killer. Why not? Okay. Let's open it up in MonoDevelop and start plugging it in. Now remember, this is going to be a switch, right? Switch on, switch off, switch on, switch off. It's a Boolean loop. We want to use the Boolean so we can check against two conditions, right? We want to check to see if a key press has been registered, if we're hitting the escape key, and we also want to check to see if a Boolean condition has been met. That way, we have something to flip the switch back to. The mistake that people often make is that they'll do the positive behavior. They'll flip the switch down, but structurally there's nothing to flip the switch back up. That's the role of a Boolean. And if we set this up right, we'll make a switch. So we can just flip, 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 flip up, flip down, flip up, flip down. So let's go ahead and start outlining this process here real fast. And we're going to do this inside the update function. It's a great place for us to very, very quickly establish key presses. So we'll do if, and I'm just going to go in and start writing this down a little bit. So if, does anyone remember the line of code that allows us to do a key press? I'll help you out. It's Friday. Input dot get key. Oops. Key get Lee. I can't type today. Get key. Then which key? Key code. .escape. Okay, here we go. Let's just see if this works. Test it as we go. Debug.log. Press the escape key. Go.
You gotta say you have escaped.
I like it. You have escaped. Let's do that. You have escaped. Escaped. There we go. Let's go back into Unity, place the button killer script on the actual game object GUI main menu, and I made a boo-boo. I forgot to capitalize the C in key code. There we go. My compiler error goes away. Let's test it out, see what we get. Hit the Q key, or escape key, excuse me. And down here in my console it says you have escaped. Okay? Excellent. It works. Okay? We're registering the key press. Let's take it up a level. Okay? Go back over into MonoDevelop, and let's just get rid of that for the time being. Now we want to do two things in here. We want to check it. We want to create a switch, right? A Boolean switch. So we just on that idea alone, because remember, we want to hit the escape key to turn something off, the escape key to turn something on, right? Off, on, off, on. That's a switch. That's a loop there that we need to create. We can only really do that with a Boolean. We need two conditions to check against. The first is the key press, and the second is the current state of the Boolean, because the action that we're going to create is going to be driven from the current state of the Boolean, right? So let's create that Boolean, and I'm just going to create a variable here called my Boolean. Oops. We'll define it as a Boolean, and there we go. All right? Now, when the game starts, we're going to copy that. When the game starts, we're going to set the current state of the Boolean. That's a really great way of doing it. We'll say the current state of the Boolean is true. Okay? All right, so we've defined what the Boolean is. We're establishing the state of the Boolean the moment the game starts. Okay? Now let's check against it. Okay? And start beginning to create that Boolean switch. So we're going to create an if, another if statement. Okay? And we're going to say, oops, I forgot pair of parentheses. If my Boolean is true, let's do this. Let's just do debug log. It's true. Okay. And then what happens when we flip the switch? If you remember this from our earlier example, when we were changing the color of that cube over and over and over again, there always needs to be something programmatically that flips the switch back in the other direction. It's not going to, I literally, in my imagination, I'm thinking of a light switch here. I flip the switch up, well, something's going to flip the switch back down again, okay? Let's flip that switch back down again right here. So my Boolean is now false, okay? Yeah. So we're saying if I press the escape key, and if the Boolean is true, or if my Boolean variable is true, write this to the console and then make it false, okay? What's cool about this, or how we finish out the switch, is that we're actually going to do an else statement, if, else, okay? If it's true, if this is true, do that. But if it's not true, if it's false, do something else, right? Now, on an else statement, you don't need parentheses because we're adopting the understanding of the condition from the if, right? So this and this are paired to each other. If this is true, do that. However, if this is false, do this, okay? And I'm going to just copy some stuff here. It's going to be the exact same structure. Oops. And, of course, we'll say false, and then this is going to get flipped back to true. Let's save the script. Question? Yeah. Yeah, because if the else is checking against if it's false, right? So we need something in our program to flip the switch back to true. Let's save the script and return to Unity and see what we get. Good job, Pat. No compiler errors. Let's see if it works. All right. Hit the escape key. The Boolean's false, right? Hit it again. The Boolean's true. And where I'm looking down here is at the bottom left-hand corner of my application frame at the console. And what's neat about this switch idea is that I can just sit here hitting escape over and over and over again until the cows come home. Okay? All right, let's stop the game. We've proven that the switch is working. Let's go on and start continuing our example. All right? So what we need to do here is activate and deactivate certain parts of our hierarchy, right? We want to hit the escape key. Our menu pops in. We do whatever we need to do, and then perhaps we hit the escape key again, the menu goes away, right? So we need to draw something and destroy it, draw something and destroy it. Where people are going to kind of get stuck is they want to try to activate and deactivate an entire game object, okay? If you go out there and start looking at some examples, they're destroying things, turning things off is easy, right? It's turning them back on that's hard, okay? There's two commands in here that we can easily fire off that will allow us to, to turn a game object off, okay? So let's just do it real fast. I'm no longer going to be doing the debug. Don't need to do that anymore. And let's replace those lines of code with a trap, if you will, okay? The trap, believe it or not, is, I want to make sure that I'm, the trap is set active. Set active game object, so we're saying this game object, right? Lowercase g, it's whatever the game object this script is attached to. Set active. Okay, we pass in a variable, which is just going to be true or false. Okay. This is going to turn it off. Okay. Copy it, put it back down here, and put this one to true. The entire game object, okay? And you'll see this in action here in a second. Let me save the game. will return back into Unity. Let's see. Cool. So, as just a reminder of how all this is set up, I have a canvas that has a button game object or a button game object nested within it. I have a text component, a button component, and then a script called button killer. So the button killer script is on my GUI main object game object. Okay, our GUI main menu game object. All right. So at the moment, what's going to happen? And FYI, set active is basically going to do this. Boop. It's going to uncheck it. That's what it's going to do. Okay. It's just going to turn it off. It doesn't actually destroy it from our hierarchy. It just turns that game object off. Okay.
So instead of turning the game world off, it's going to turn it into it.
You got it. Okay. Let's see if it works. Okay. Let's play the game. Hit the escape key. It goes off. Aha! Right. Turning things off is easy. However, if I hit the escape key again, what's not happening? It's not turning back on. Okay. So if you want to completely disable a game object, set active is a good thing to use. Now, the question that we land ourselves at is, why won't it turn back on? We've proven the switch is working, but why won't it turn back on? The script's off. You got it. The moment we turn a game object off, its update function is also off. So it's no longer listening at all. It's no longer listening at all. Okay? Now, there are some things that we could do in here. The canvas is still on. It's still active within inside the scene. So we also could go into maybe on an additional script that we place on the canvas and saying, okay, if this thing is off, if the GUI main menu is off, find it and enable it. Okay? But there's a different and probably a little bit more easier way of getting to the result that we're after. Okay? Turning game objects on and off in their entirety is very doable, but it can add a certain level of complexity into your game. Okay? So we're always looking for simple ways to get the exact same result. Okay? The canvas and all of its children game objects in both of these scenarios are going to be drawn on every single frame. So there's no optimization bonus in doing it one way or another. It's just kind of a programming use. And actually, there's a lot of other functionality that we gain by turning off this next thing. So instead of turning off this game object, what we're going to do is that we're going to turn off the canvas's ability to render. Okay? So I'm on the canvas now, the topmost parent inside of my entire GUI system. And check it out. I can turn off, I can enable and disable that little button right there, and all of its children are also going to be disabled. Okay? You'll see this in action here in a little bit more detail in a minute. It's pretty neat, though. Okay? Okay, so that's the goal. That's the goal. Let's do this. An idea just popped in my mind. Let's make our canvas a little bit more complex to further kind of galvanize the idea that the canvases can, and in many cases, going to be turning off and controlling multiple game objects. Let's do this. Let's put a little box behind our button here. Okay. Let's do, I got my canvas selected, and I'll just right-click on it to get the contextual menu. And under UI, what I'm going to do is add a panel. Okay. And a panel, let's just take a look at it. Bloop. Okay, it's going to fill your canvas. By default, that's the command that it's going to do. It's going to fill your canvas, okay, with just kind of this lovely rounded rectangle. This is a sprite. A sprite is just a two-dimensional image that's being flooded across the entire rec, the entire square. What we're going to do here is that we're going to make this a little bit smaller, okay? I'm in my rec transform tool, by the way, so I get the little blue cubes. Now, there's two things in here that we need to control. Of course, I can grab the blue cubes and do that, but we also want to grab its area of influence too. Much like we had, this is the area that panel is going to be living within, right? So here's what I'm going to do instead. If you hold down the Shift key and grab, well, come on with that. There we go. Wasn't clicking on it. If you grab the Shift key, it's kind of hard to click on it. Yeah, you can do both at the same time. There we go. And what I'm going to do, there it is, just maybe make a box behind my object. Come on, fingers. I got it. It's going to happen right now. There it is. Awesome. I did it. Something like that. There we go. Just a little box. You can even change the color if I wanted. Yeah, this is how you see a lot of that escape menu stuff. This is like kind of a ghosted box. Hey, while we're here, let's just go in and make the color of our button not black anymore. All right. Now, it looks a little funky still. Our button's kind of gray now. That's because, let's see, make sure that my button isn't transparent at all. Yep, I'm good. Okay, so what we need to do is that we need to make my button a child of the parent. I'm going to left click and drag it on top, and now, there it is. Now it's in its full glory. If I was to move my panel around, by the way, all of its children components would go along for the ride, too. A great way if you had like 3 or 4 buttons in a row here, you'd have a big panel in the center and have all those buttons kind of visually nested inside of that panel. It's a great way of making a nice, clean interface. You see it all the time in games. Shoot, why don't we just do that real fast? Let me duplicate my main menu button. Main menu is not going to be main menu. We'll make this into a quit button. There we go. Pull it down. Of course, we're going to say quit here now. Quit game. And then my panel, I'll return to my rect tool. There we go. Make it a little bit bigger. We got some positioning in here that we got to do still. There we go. Lovely. Let's play the game, see what we get. Yep, both my buttons work. Click on them, rock and roll. So now we're creating a much, much more complex system of GUI elements. We have a panel, we have 2 buttons. But I want to simplify our code base and our code system here to facilitate the deactivation and activation of this entire system. So watch what happens now when I click on the canvas game component over here in my inspector. Bloop. See how it turns everything off at the exact same time? This is what we're after. Okay. Now, we're not deactivating an entire game component. I'm not doing this, right? Because watch what happens. I want you to look very carefully over here inside of my hierarchy. Okay. When I deactivate the parent, what happens to all of its children? Yeah, they're actually still active, but you can see that visually they kind of get grayed out. A little bit more difficult to control them now, but we still can control them, okay? So this is not what we're after. This is what we're after, because once I turn off the canvas renderer, if you will, what happens to the game objects in my hierarchy? Not a single thing. They don't get their activity within our scene doesn't change. We're just rendering the canvas, or we're not rendering the canvas. So that's what we're after here, okay? And if we work hard at this, we can very easily tie this to our button press. Now that we're controlling the canvas, now that we're controlling the canvas game component on the canvas game object, I know that can be confusing. I apologize for that, though. Let's change the location of our script. We don't want it down here on my main menu game object anymore, okay? I'm going to remove it. Let's put it on the canvas, because this is now the game object that we want to control when I hit the escape key, okay? Go add component, and here's a great way. A lot of folks forget that if you go into the scripts section, it will scan your entire project directory and find all the scripts. Here's button killer. All right. Let's return to monodevelop and see what we need to see. This command here, this one right there, is not going to work anymore, okay? Because set active controls a game object. We want to control a game component, a piece of a much larger game component. So what we need to do initially is go in and tell the computer, well, which game component do you want me to control? So we got to define it. Let's define it with a variable, because we're going to have this huge, long, list of stuff to write. We can distill and capture that in a variable much easier. So let's just do a variable, and I'll call this, I don't know, my canvas. Here we go. We'll data type it to a type canvas. However, we haven't loaded anything into the variable yet. I'm going to copy it. And much like we did with the myBoolean variable at the start of the game, we want to load the variable myCanvas with the actual component itself. Now, we did this once before, or maybe twice before, when we were changing the colors of game objects and the render and all that jazz. If you remember, the structure for accessing a game component is real easy. We'll get component, and then we need to tell it which component. So get component, dot, then open and close carets, then open and close parentheses, semicolon. Okay? That's how you write it. And whatever goes in between the carets is going to determine which component piece you're going to get. It could be a renderer, a mesh renderer. In our case, we're going to put the canvas in here. There we go. And that's all we need to do. So as a reminder, we're getting a game component. Which component? The canvas game component that's currently sitting on this game object. Yeah, go ahead. So in every sense, we're getting that.
So that's your applying that script to a specific canvas, so you don't need to define if there's other canvases, right?
No, that's correct. Yeah. Yep, that's correct. The script is currently residing on this game object. The name of it really doesn't matter. Okay? But we're getting its local game component canvas right here, that thing. All right. Let's return back over to MonoDevelop and continue our work, because we're almost done here. Okay? Now, the thing that we need to do is basically change this line of code. The setActive is only going to work on the visibility or the activity of a game object. We don't want that anymore. We want to control a component, and this is how we do it. So I want to access the variable that's storing the component. So let's paste that in. So myCanvas dot, it really is kind of easy. It's just enabled. And I want to set this to false. So we turn it off here. And as one might imagine, we're going to turn it on down here in my else statement. So let's talk through the logic of this real fast before we jump back over into Unity and see if it works. At the beginning of the game, we're creating two variables. One's a Boolean, and one is just kind of an arbitrary variable that I called myCanvas that we're loading a very specific game component into. That's what we're doing here. We're taking the myCanvas variable and we're loading it with a component. Every frame of the game, we're asking a question. The first question we're asking is, did we hit the escape key? If we did, then another question is going to be asked. What's the current state of my Boolean? If it's true, turn my canvas off. And flip the switch, flip the Boolean statement back to false. However, if I hit the input key and the Boolean is false, that's where this else statement comes in. Turn the canvas back on and put the Boolean value, the Boolean variable back to true. Okay, save the script, go back into Unity, see if I've made any typos, which is likely on a Friday afternoon. Oh my goodness, look at that. Let's play the game, see what we get. I don't even know what's going to happen in here. I can see my little cube rotating in the background. Hit the escape key. Yep. Yeah, I've noticed that this is actually a product of the, I think, of the actual keyboard itself, of the escape key. Yeah, I don't think it's firing off a couple times. Yeah, I've noticed that, and you can hold it down, which is fun. The escape keys on these Mac keyboards are odd. If I hit it like very lightly, it works just perfectly. Yeah, it's sensitive. It's sensitive. Let's see. There's no canvas attached to GUI quit. I think that's fine, actually, because it's looking for missing component exception. There's no canvas attached to GUI quit in game object, but the script is trying to access it. Yeah. Oh, this is my fault. GUI quit still has the button killer because I duplicated my main menu button, and I made GUI quit main menu, and I forgot to take off. There we go. Now we're good. Let's clear it. We'll save the game. Let's play it again. It'll still be kind of jittery a little bit. Yeah, I don't know. Here, let's do this. Because I'm pretty sure it's just the escape key that's kind of finicky. But let's do this. Let's do, instead of escape, let's do Q.
Yeah, Oregon Trail style.
Still kind of funky. So maybe it is a product of how we've set this up. I think it's going on and off super fast. Say again? I don't think so, but get key. Oh, that's a good idea. Let's do get key pressed down. That probably will fix it. Or it's not get, it's hold on a sec. Check against the documentation here. I want to make sure. Let's just do get key. To get key down, I can never remember. This is why input.getKey. There's all the variables. Get key. No. I'm also on C#. Input.getKey. What is it? Get key up? Or maybe it is just get key down. Let me double check my get key down. That's what it is. Input.getKey down. Let's save that. Let's try that. Oops. See what we get. Compiler error goes away. So I'm doing this with the Q. There it is. So it's just my bad syntax that was causing the problem. But it works. It works. Yeah, get key down. You can also do get key up too. So I got a couple options. I know some people don't like to have a function or something fired off until you release the key. Kind of gives you a bailout moment. Or like, oh shit, I didn't want to do that, and then you go do something else, right? Up will work. Oops, my game's still running. That's not gonna. Yeah. Now it's not going to do it until I release the key. So you got options. I think I like get key down. There we go. Save it. Hey, look at that. We're on our way. Okay. So this is starting to look pretty fantastic. Okay. What's the one thing that isn't working, though, that we haven't wired in yet? We've effectively created the escape menu. Yeah, we pause the game. And let's actually put the key code back to escape just so we're kind of running with the same example that we had before. So now what we got to do is start pausing the game. Okay? So, luckily for us, this is a really easy thing. Unity has a really great built-in understanding of time. And there's a global pause that we can do. It's pretty fun. Let's just do it real fast. And we're going to do it if this condition's met. If we hit the escape key and the status of our Boolean is true, then we're going to pause the game, right? Here's how we do it. It is time.timescale, and S is capitalized. Scale, believe it or not, is set to 0. That's it. Copy it down here. I'll put it to 1. So 0 is paused, 1 is active, right? Let's save the game. And if It all works. No compiler errors, which is great. Now I have mine backwards, but it still works, right? Well, if you look at the way that I have it, when we start the game, what should we see? Just the cube, right? Yeah, just the cube moving. So I need to go back in and flip a couple of variables here. Luckily for us, it's easy to do that because at the start of the game, let's do this. Let's just make this false. Not falser. Let's see, does that turn it off? No, it doesn't. However, we can just go in and go, bloop. Just have it be off. There we go. Hit the escape key, it turns back on. Yeah. Yeah, let's put this back to true. You know what we could do if we wanted to? Instead of, I'm relying upon my input in the inspector turning the canvas off when the game starts, right? Because when we start the game, this is how we want it to look. Okay, hit the escape key, it stops the game, but it doesn't draw the frame because it's already off, right? Hit it again, so we're kind of backwards. But we can fix that just by going in and changing the values. Let's see if we can get that to happen at the moment. So, okay, so my canvas, okay, we're getting it. Let's do this. Let's flip these values. No, that's true. That's false. See if that does it for us. Okay, it's off. Ah, there it works. Rotates. Hit the escape key. The menu's drawn. The cube continues to rotate or stops rotating. And then when I hit the escape key again, we turn off the canvas. The game continues. Okay. Now the wiring of all these buttons is identical to the way we had it earlier when we were loading a level or quitting a level. It is, in every sense, wholesale identical. Okay. So I'll leave you in to kind of put all that stuff together. But this is the basic system of it. Okay. Makes sense. Pretty cool, huh? Yeah, not as bad. And the thing that's going to get people, especially if you're using scripts and code snippets that you find online, which is great, by the way. It's a great way of learning and a great way of working with other people's architecture because there are some ninja programmers out there that are going to do it, better, faster, and cheaper than we can ever, right? But the thing to remember is that if you deactivate a game object, it's very difficult to reactivate it, okay? It's easy to turn a component piece on and off. A little bit more of a challenge to turn a game object on and off.
We have like a global variable in the scene, would it be just really easy to turn on and off?
What do you mean a global variable?
So like for mine, I have like boss HP. So whenever, say like my boss HP gets to 5, I want to turn on some objects. So things like keeping a global variable.
Yeah, well, that's a great. If you remember, I think it was last week we talked about instantiation, right?
Yeah.
As long as that instantiation command will tell us to load a prefab and then at a place and at a rotation value. So for yours, you can say when the HP of my boss gets to 5, instantiate this here at this rotation. Yeah, instantiation is different from kind of deactivating and activating.
I was thinking of, can I have the objects in my scene just turned off at the very beginning?
No. Yeah. You have to instantiate because if it's off, the script that's associated with it is never going to be listening for any input.
But I mean, if I had a global variable that would turn it on when it reaches that HP?
As long as you can access it. Yeah, as long as you can tell the computer to go find that game object and set it to active. Yeah. Let's try that. Let's see if we can get that to work real fast because now I'm kind of curious if we can get that to go. All right, so let's do this. Yeah.
Just like throwing that all in the global variable
That'll work. It's just, and we can even do it with a key press. We'll kind of piggyback on what we're working with here.
Wouldn't that give you more control
It's not that it's impossible, and I'm not saying that people don't do it or that we shouldn't do it. It just takes a little bit more energy. That's all. And there's a couple things in here that we need to make sure that we're telling the computer to do, is that we need to go find a game object, right? And then, yeah, and then turn that thing on. Okay?
Is that going to create a good performance issue?
You know, when it does actually. When you have a lot of GameObject.finds in your game, you know, it's always asking that question. It's always tracking where that object is in its state, right? You know, it will work. Let's see if we can get it to work.
I mean, like, it's like the global variables can be passed.
Global variables, no, that's it's just that if you're asking the computer to find programmatically through a script, if a whole series of scripts are using the GameObject.find command, it can start to slow down the machine, right? Because now the machine is having to manage and kind of track, if you will, a lot of different game objects that it otherwise would not be doing. All right, so let's do this. Let's see if we can get this wired in here. We'll have a blue cube and a red cube. We play the game. Yeah, there we go. They're both rotating. Awesome. Okay, let's make them a little bit different. Cool. Now they're a little bit different from each other. The red cube is going to be persistent, but let's do this. Let's just call this blue cube. Okay. All right. So on my script, and I'll just do this on the script that I'm currently working in exclusively for simplicity's sake. We now need to go in and ask if the conditions met. We need to go in and do GameObject.find. And that's the command, right? Game, let's see, because we got to do two things. We got to find the game object, and then we got to enable it. How are we going to do that? Let's do this. We'll have to make a private variable, I think, probably for this, right? We'll find it, we'll store that game object in a variable, and then we'll enable or disable that variable. Can we do this all inside of the function that we're currently working in? Maybe. Yeah. So let's do this. We're going to write a private variable here. Call it var. We'll call this, I don't know, Pat's cube. We'll data type that. And we'll do game object dot find. I want to make sure that I'm writing the code correctly here, so I'm going to search it. Can't remember if the inside the parentheses if we need a pair of quotes or not. Oops. Command, what is that? Command quotes. Command open quotes. Okay, cool. So it is in quotes. And I believe it was blue cube? Yeah. All right. Blue cube dot set. I'm not sure if this is going to work, but we'll find out. I can turn it on. Well, let's just see if it works. Did it work? Oh, it's not. It's Pat's cube. Sorry. we go. All right, so blue cube. Now, I've already forgotten, we are enabling it here, so let's turn it off. So when I hit the escape key, if this works, and I'm not sure if it is, yeah. Object reference not set to an instance of an object, yeah. So I think here is the workaround. Because right now, this thing is disabled, right? No, it's not. It's on canvas. Yeah. So we're going out. We're finding the blue cube. Okay. And let's do this. Let's just extract it. Let's just see if it works conceptually. We'll put it on a new script. A new JavaScript called blue cube. Cube controller. There we go. And we'll put here we go. Let's do this. I'm going to extract that from here at the start of the game. We'll load the variable. Pat's cube equal to blue cube. Get this out of there. We'll have to define the variable Pat's cube. Pat's cube is a, apparently I've forgotten how to write a variable. Var Pat's cube is of type game object. Go. So this is going to activate it every frame of the game. We only want to do it once. Let's extract that, and we'll put a key press or something, and we'll make a new function just called activate cube. Oops. There we go. All right. So now we'll do a key press in here. We'll do if input dot get key, oops, down, key code dot, what are we going to do? Let's give the E key a little bit of love. We don't give the E key enough love. There we go. Then we'll do activate cube. There we go. So we'll call a function when we hit the E key. Let's just see if that works. Save the game, put the blue cube. So I don't think this is going to work at the moment. Yeah, this certainly is not going to work at the moment, but let's just give it a try. Oops, I messed up. If, why no likey? Why no likey? Expecting. What? Did I save it? That one. Does anyone else see the faults in my logic? There we go. No? Maybe? Yes? No? No. That one. Oh, we are missing one on the end, though. That's why. So that one goes there. That one goes there. Yep, that was it. Just didn't have enough parentheses. Forgot to capitalize letter C. And scripting makes you humble, right? second guesses your ability to type pretty quickly. All right, this is not going to work, but let's just see. Nope, I didn't think so. Because at the moment, the blue cube is off, so that script is not going to be evaluating anything. However, let's do this. There's not this, when it's off, all of its game components are off, including the script. Okay. However, let's try this. Let's try adding a empty game object. Okay. And we'll just call this empty, just so we empty. And I want to parent blue cube to that. Okay. Yep.
Same thing, so lunchbox, global variables, like so you can say within that, hey, instead of activating the blue cube, you're saying activate this component.
Right now, when this is off, okay. So when this game object is off, okay, all of its components are also off, right? Because the game object is the parent of all of this stuff. So it's never actually registering this thing right there, right? It's never getting to that point. However, if we nest it, and if we turn on, well,
It's like messing with the canvas.
yeah, you can always turn the mesh render on and off, but we're trying to activate an entire object. We need to see if it's active in the hierarchy, because I can turn off this. I can turn off the parent, but this cube is still on, right? It's not being drawn in the scene. Let's see, how am I going to do this? I've always created things by instantiating them in the game. That's always been my kind of workaround to this problem. But to create something in code that's already active in your hierarchy, let's see, turn it off, super easy. You want to make sure, got it. Okay, so here's what we're going to do. We're going to remove our script from the blue cube. Let's see if this works. We'll go to the empty game object, and we'll put the script on there. There we go. Now, let's do this. So it's game object. It should find it still, right? Let's see if it does. Okay. Let's see if it does. The blue cube is going to be disabled. Yep. Just double checking everything here. Now the script is on the parent. Let's see if it works. I'm kind of curious. Yeah, object reference is not set to an instance of the object itself. It didn't even load the game object, which is a bummer. What if I go in and manually do it? Yeah, same thing. This is a good question. Yeah, turning it off is the easy bit, right? It's just turning it back on. I've always turned things on. Well, I haven't, my workaround is just always just instantiate it, right? Because that will create the object in the scene itself. Okay. Yeah, no, it will work. It will work. It requires you to make a prefab. Yeah, I can turn it off till the cows come home easily. And I know there's a way to do it. I just don't remember off the top of my head how it is to do it. Because you got to check to see if that object is active within inside the hierarchy. And then I can't remember off the top of my head which one of these we put the script on. So here's my suggestion to you, to make it easy. Instantiate, right? You already know the location, right? Or you should know the location. You can define it pretty easily with numbers, or you can define it with with an empty game object. That's pretty simple. Yeah. That kind of goes back to what we were talking about. I think it was last week we talked about instantiation, right? Yeah, that'd be the easy bit. Say again? Yeah, check it out. Check it out. There is a true and false statement to set active, but once it's been deactivated, right? any script or component that's on it is not going to be evaluated. And getting a separate game object to activate a child or something else is the goal. Maybe if we do this, maybe if we take this and take it out of the hierarchy, we'll turn it off, excuse me, empty's got to stay on, blue cube will turn off. I believe it's finding it. No, it didn't find it because it would have been loaded in right there. So it's not even finding the game object. All right, let's see if we can find the game object. Maybe I'm doing that bit wrong.
Oh, you gotta define these. Is it paths cube? Did you find a paths cube or blue cube?
So the game object is called blue cube, and I'm loading it into a variable. Let's just call it cube so there's no confusion. Okay. Thank you. Oops. Let's just triple check. Yeah, I think I got everything right. Game object, start of the game, cube is game object. Cube. Yeah, because we got to do something. We got to load the variable with something, right? So we're finding the game object and we're storing it in that variable. And then we're taking that variable. It's doing setActive.true. Here's a great. Here, let's just copy that code snippet because it works identically to the way we're doing. Let's just test to see if it's even working. It actually is working. If you look for just a brief second, let's turn off. Yeah, it is working. It's finding the cube, and then it's rotating it. Shouldn't be rotating it until I hit the E key, though. Blue cube, cube animation. Oh, we're going to turn that one off. There we go. Yep, there we go. And now when I hit the E key, it rotates 45 units. I went and, oops, stopped the game. If I did just get key, then I can hold it.
Oh, that's interesting. You said you get a key down.
Yeah, if you do key down, it only does it once. But if you just do get key, it's going to continue adding that value as long as you're pressing the key.
If you want to give like an object to your player.
Yeah.
So they want to go to
All right, so through code, this is all working, right? I am getting the cube. This script is currently sitting on an external game object. So it is working, and I just completely destroyed my script. There we go. So, is it cube dot set active? Let's just see if we can turn it off. If we can turn it off, that's a good indication that we're on the right track. Okay, bloop, goes away. If it's already off, though, can we turn it back on? I don't think so. This is where we're getting stuck, right? Hit the E key. Does it turn back on? Yeah. It says object reference not set to an instance of the object. let's try this. It's just as an experiment. Let's try making this into a prefab. Because now this is an instance of the prefab type. Let's just see if that works. Yeah, negative. Do some research on it, David. See what you can find. I'd be interested to hear the answer if you figure out something. I know it's out there. I've always just instantiated something. And this is what I do, just so everyone's kind of on the same page. So I'll continue to use this entire function. So when I hit the E key, I'm basically firing off this custom function called activateCube. And let's just do this. Let's just do instantiate. Instantiate. What are we going to instantiate? Do you remember? It's prefab. It's the name of the prefab, which for R is blue cube. And I think I misspelled it. Nope, I got it right. So blue cube. And then where are we going to do it? Does anyone remember? Transform. You could? Yeah, you could make a variable, but let's just take the current location of the game object, which is it's on this that empty game object, right? Transform dot position. There we go. Transform. I think I got to capitalize the P. Oh, it didn't like that. Unknown identifier. Oh, I forgot to. We got to load in the variable. Bar blue cube is of type game object. Maybe it's lowercase. Hold on a second. This is why I have an entire library of... Yeah, know how to write. Transform. Oh, it's transfer. Rotation. There we go. There it goes. Right, so nothing. The E key, the variable blue cube of blue cube has not been assigned. Oh, my bad. Forgot to load the prefab in. Forgot to load the prefab on Know It. Cray. And it's not there. That's because when I made the prefab, I forgot to turn it on. I know, right? So what happens when you get 8 million things going at the same time. Now when I hit the E key, it pops in. Yep. Now, where it's popping in is at the location of our empty game object, right? So if I move my empty game object, that's where it's going to get instantiated. Boop, over there. So that's my way of doing it. Welcome to the world of programming. There's 8 million different ways of getting to the exact same result. I've always found the process of instantiation just really easy. But that's just me. Cool. You give life to things, you can turn it off or you can destroy them. Yeah, it's kind of a cool thing. All right, questions on what we talked about today. So this structure, this format of calling our UI or just turning that component, that canvas component on and off, can be used for any number of different things. This is a simple escape menu. This is an inventory system. This could be, any bazillion different things that you want to turn on and off when it comes to your UI. It makes it very, very easy to get this stuff kind of up and running. Sound good? All right, cool. So here's what I would like us to do. Let's spend some time checking in with one another and seeing where we are on the progress of our game. By this point, we should be close-ish to having all the art assets done, okay? Or at the very least, having the models finished for our game, for our level. If we return to the calendar just for a brief moment here, let's just have a reality check as to how much time we have left in the semester to finish this project. So here it is on Friday the 28th. If we're meeting next week on the 5th, what's a reasonable expectation to have, completed by the 5th? Yeah, I like that. So at the very least, everything in Unity, right? All the models, all the textures, the terrain built. You should be pretty much at the conclusion of your art asset creation stage, right? From the 5th through the 17th, it's all hands on deck getting the scripting components and the interactivity of your level up and running, right? Because that's going to take some time. Questions? Everyone confident? Sure, they know what's going on? Are you freaking out yet? A little bit? Good. It's good to freak out. That means you care. That means you're invested, right? I like that. But let's get to work, all right? Let me just turn off the live stream, and then I can help you out.